Yes, the talk is titled Everything of Worth is Defenseless, and I hope by the end of the talk it will be clear what I mean with that. But first of all, I want to dedicate this talk and every word I'm saying and every single letter to Bhante. Every breath I take, even, I want to dedicate to Bhante. So I will begin by asking you to close your eyes again, maybe, and to take a few moments to become more silent. And now, keep your eyes closed and imagine that you're sitting in an orchard, maybe somewhere in France, or Italy, or Spain, maybe somewhere in the 19th century, and you are not alone in that orchard. A few meters from you, Van Gogh is standing very still and absorbed, staring at some apple blossoms. And a bit more to the right, you see someone sitting at a table. And you don't know him. And in gazing at him, you hear the warm, soft wind whisper that this man is a poet and has written on silence as the angel of higher truths. Silence as the angel of higher truths. And right now he is not writing, though there is a pen in his hands, but he is waiting, and he is looking at the treetops. And in the orchard you see some old and gentle tree spirits as well. And they are singing old hymns of heroic kings and queens. And then you see the Buddha. And you didn't expect this. To see the Buddha here in this orchard in the 19th century somewhere in southern Europe, but there he is, standing in reverence, with folded hands, in golden light, intimate with the universe. And the orchard now is also shining in golden light. Now open your eyes and come back to the 21st century. The poet in the orchard is Maurice Maeterlinck, and the world desperately needs the Dhamma, but also a bit of Belgian culture. So I thought I'd introduce you to Maeterlinck. And Maurice Maeterlinck won the Nobel Prize in 1911, and he was a playwright and a poet. And with the award, the Nobel Prize, went the commentary in appreciation of his many-sided literary activities, and especially of his dramatic works, which are distinguished by a wealth of imagination and by a poetic fancy, which reveals, sometimes in the guise of a fairy tale, a deep inspiration, while in a mysterious way they appeal to the reader's own feelings and stimulate their imaginations. Now, isn't that wonderful? A wealth of imagination, deep inspiration, in a mysterious way appealing to the reader's own feelings and stimulating their imaginations. By the way, Maeterlinck was born in Ghent, and like Vasika said, we are doing very regularly some days on beauty and silence, and we have used some of his work already on that days. to reflect and contemplate on the Dhamma. I think it's very inspiring and maybe even necessary to let local artists, contemporary or from the past, to let them communicate with the Dhamma or vice versa. And I'll be quoting some of one of his essays, The Secret of Silent Being, and all is my translation. So I'll give a few quotes now. Silence is the element in which all great things are created and then come into being to rule this life in a majestic way. So silence is the element in which all great things are created and then come into being to rule this life in a majestic way. As soon as the lips are asleep, the souls awake. Silence is the angel of higher truths and the interpreter of the unknown. And the secret of silent being is the essential silence and a sacred refuge that will never be lost. So when the firstborn should ever meet the lastborn, they will be silent in the same way, in their kisses, in their sadness, in their consternation. In that essay, at least that's how I read it, he pleads for more awe, for more reverence in relation to life, to death, to love, to friendship, etc. More awe and more reverence in relation to what is deeply human, to what is deeply real. And one can do that by being more silent, because in silence the mysteries of life and love and the mysteries of death are more shown, not necessarily revealed, but in silence we are more touched and caressed by those mysteries. Now, what I hope in a sense is that this language, like silence is the angel of higher truths, etc., I do hope that this language sounds rather old-fashioned and solemn, maybe. And with old-fashioned I really mean not from this time, not contemporary use of language. Speaking for myself, I really love such language. Such language has something ceremonious, as it were, and something fulfilling at the same time. And it takes me along into the clouds and beyond. And the language Maeterlinck is using tempts me, seduces me into something much, much bigger than me and much more real than everything I know. It is as if something is calling. And what I particularly like about Maeterlinck is his receptivity for reverence, his being open for what is sacred, to what is holy, and looking for ways to express this by using words which are dressed in holiness, words which are referring to something beyond, words which are bowing for what is sacred in this universe, words which are cherishing what is so precious, so dear, so valued. From the Arya Paryesana Sutta: this Dhamma that I have attained is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, peaceful, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. So this Dhamma that I have attained is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, peaceful, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. In the depth of the Dhamma, the beauty of bodhicitta is shown, a wonderful, delightful, mysterious force which enchants living beings and transforms them from self-centered to selfless persons, pervaded with love and compassion, illuminated. The Dhamma is a jewel because it leads us from a dry and barren abyss into green and fertile meadows and orchards. The Dhamma is a jewel because it sets one on fire to be a force for good in the world, and it burns evil. It is a guarantee for change, real transformation. Transformation of the ordinary mind into an orchard of imagination. Into a mind completely unknown. But this unknown mind is our heritage. And growing into this mind is really what we are born for. The Dhamma is abundance. It's an explosion of colors, just like a painting of Van Gogh. I think Van Gogh was a very generous person. And the Dhamma is an explosion underneath all worldly samsaric patterns. It wipes them out, it crushes them, it banishes them. And what is the meaning of life nowadays for many people in our world? Maybe it's an evening out in a posh restaurant with exquisite wine and exquisite meals and and gastronomy as the highest possible in life. Or maybe it's cycling up the Mont Ventoux in France, a mountain. Because that needs to be on one's bucket list, apparently. Maybe it's a bucket list, maybe it's that the meaning of life. Or maybe it's the life of some rock star who acts as a so-called rebel, but really is no more than a 3-year-old with a smelling nappy. And sometimes I find it painful how we all, and I include myself definitely, how we all as humans are wasting our human potential, our heritage, by only using what I would call our barbecue imagination. If the sun is peeping and the weather is fine and there are blue skies, what can we do? Well, let's have a barbecue. So, who are our heroes anyway? Are it the cooks, the cyclists in the Tour de France, the barbecue manufacturers, the people who are promising groundbreaking insights through online courses, the ones who fulminate on Twitter? Are these not all expressions of quite some poverty in how we live our lives, of quite some waste of human potential, of painful ignoring of what is deeply, deeply and truly the highest? Are we really listening to what is most intimate in the universe? Are we really listening to what is ultimately possible? It seems we are living our lives in the shadows of the forest, anxious, blind, confused, while great beings are out playing in the golden sun, free, full of joy and delight, shining and bright, and without a barbecue. The Dhamma offers a totally different perspective. The Dhamma isn't playing around in that field of dark, confused ego games. It's an explosion of joy. The Dhamma elevates, the Dhamma lifts us up. Thousands and thousands of joys and delights and blessings are poured out over us. Our mind is lifted up to the level of a free individual, so that we don't need to try and possess others anymore. The Dhamma enables us to live in a glorious, majestic, noble way. The Dhamma gives wings to our mind. So the Dhamma is precious. The Dhamma is a jewel of the mighty conquerors. The Dhamma is a gem. It's a life elixir. Do we believe that? I think most of us do believe that, and I hope we do. Otherwise, why should we practice the Dhamma? But we need to be cautious not to pull the Dhamma downwards. The Dhamma is the most precious jewel in the universe, which means that the Dhamma is not in the same ranking of values like veganism, diversity, democracy, secular mindfulness, etc. There is a hierarchy in vision. There is a hierarchy in values. I'm talking here about the jewel of the Dhamma. So please, let it remain a jewel. Let us not reduce it into a wellness therapy a bit infused by some or other feel-good practice to fix and cope with our samsaric existence. Alive in samsara is not to be fixed because it is hopeless. An ordinary mind is hopeless. A reactive mind is hopeless. So why should I use the Dhamma to try and fix it? If I do so, the jewel isn't shining as a jewel anymore. The jewel loses its brightness and brilliance, its shimmer. It is no longer a palace of beauty, no longer a shelter from suffering, no longer a path which releases and liberates. So where is our compassion then? If we really want to be compassionate, we need to see the Dhamma as the most precious jewel in the universe. A quote Bhante, our roots need to be deep, it need to be roots in the sky. And a Flemish mystic from the 14th century, Ruysbroek, talked about hanging in God, and he used the image of an upside down tree. So our roots are in the transcendental. Our roots need to be roots in the sky. And by the way, I was seeing Bhante yesterday, and we talked a bit about Maeterlinck, which he knew very well, or which he knows very well. And he started himself by talking about Ruysbroek. And I was amazed because Ruysbroek is a Flemish mystic from the 14th century, and he knew that. He was knowing Ruysbroek. So, well, amazing. In a sense, we all know about the transcendental, in a sense, because one can definitely say the transcendental is something completely different, completely unknown to us, so very different from our mundane consciousness. And there is something unfathomable, there is something ungraspable, there is something holy and sacred. Maeterlinck again, the supreme poetry has no other purpose than to keep open the highways which lead from what we are seeing to what we are not seeing. The supreme poetry has no other purpose than to keep open the highways which lead from what we are seeing to what we are not seeing. So poetry is to lead us closer to what we are not seeing. Poetry is to lead us closer to the transcendental, to that wondrous, ineffable adventure of going beyond, of transforming self-centeredness into selflessness. And to travel to the transcendental, we don't need Thomas Gradgrind as a guide. And Thomas Gradgrind is a character from the novel Hard Times by Charles Dickens. And he is obsessed with facts, with targets, with figures. And he believes that poetry and imagination are rubbish. And the only thing that matters is utilitarianism and what can be measured. And nowadays it seems to me that our language has become more and more profaned. A language where a kettle refers to a kettle and a fly to a fly. And of course, if a kettle is a kettle, well, then it's a kettle. I don't want to complicate things. But there is a language which does not refer to something graspable. There is a language which does not refer to something measurable, to something fathomable. And there is a language like that because there exists something which is unfathomable and very, very deep and hard to see. Very, very deep and hard to see. So we are living in an age in which we can think that everything can be described, explained, pinned down. And an American journalist once said, for every complex problem there is a simple and clear solution, which is wrong. And very often I am staggered by the network of reality. And what I see is only a tiny part of a huge, enormous, dizzying set of conditions. And I wander in that universe of conditions, amazed, but also very often, so very, very often, I am walking in a rather clumsy way. So very clumsy. I do reduce reality. I do reduce that unfathomable and infinite play of conditions to a few constructions and storylines like, this is who I am, or everything will be all right, or he or she doesn't like me, or I am a stream entrant, or measuring is knowing. A huge, infinite rampart of opinions not really rooted in careful reflection, but based on prejudices, assumptions, standards within certain contexts, all kinds of unpleasant Vedana. By the way, I have been musing on how opinions not really rooted in careful reflections could look like. It's not really of any importance, but I have been musing on that topic and I was simply enjoying myself. But I want to tell it anyway. And in my imagination, such an opinion has greasy long hair. And I hope no one in the audience for the moment is looking like that. And it has a rather savage, ferocious moustache, and with banners in its heart. And I have been told that banners can mean a lot of things, but I really mean those things that knights and soldiers are waving around to cry for victory or something like that. Flags or anything like that. Banners. So, and if I am not cautious, and I'm afraid that is more than what's happening, those banners will form an army. And those banners will form an army that needs to be defended, that needs to be protected. An army that wants to conquer and defeat. An army that wants to wave and cry victory and that wants to crush and separate. And that's why, as a poet myself, try to create a precious highway with sacred words or with mundane words dressed in sacred robes or with words referring to something which cannot be grasped, nor measured, nor explained in a straightforward and simple way. Remember Maeterlinck, the supreme poetry has no other purpose than to keep open the highways which lead from what we are seeing to what we are not seeing. And we need to honor this. We need to stand up for this. We don't need to be afraid of what is sacred and most precious, and we don't need to be afraid to express this. For quite some time I have been aware that I am a devotional man, that I am a religious man, believing that I do believe there is a transcendental, that I and we can connect with that something transcendental, and that something transcendental can flow through us, and that we can channel this mysterious stream of love and compassion which turns an earthling into a glorious, noble, victorious, awakened being. But I was ashamed. It didn't fit with a storyline that I told myself, that I was a reasonable man, that I didn't need to believe in fairy tales, because I was a child of the 20th century, the 21st century, so feet on the ground. But I have thrown away that storyline. And now I enjoy lifting my feet off the ground, jumping into the air, jumping towards the clouds and beyond. And the perspective is much wider, because I am devotional, I am religious, and I do believe in sacredness, the sacredness of the Dhamma. So do I allow this sacredness in my life? And if you are an artist, do you allow this sacredness in your art? Is there room for what is holy, for what is sacred, in making choices, in the way we lead our lives? If that wonderful and mysterious force which enchants and transforms and which we call bodhicitta is to overflow us, is to flood us, is to conquer the world, then we need to invite that bodhicitta in our poetry and art, not to defend or protect, but to animate and nourish. There is a Dutch poet, Lucebert, who wrote the verse, alles van waarde is weerloos. So everything of worth is defenceless. Everything of worth is naked. And we can't defend the Dhamma, and we don't need to defend the Dhamma. We don't need to protect the Dhamma. And yes, outside our order and movement and inside our order and movement, there are several kinds of threats and pitfalls. Secularism, rationalism, the Dhamma as therapy, scientific reductionism. And we don't need to defend the Dhamma. Defending, protecting is way too crude and gross for something as precious as the Dhamma. Imagine someone coming from the 19th century orchard again into this marquee. Maybe it's Maeterlinck, maybe Van Gogh, maybe someone else. And that person carries with him or her a crystal ball, the Dhamma as a crystal ball. And if you should hold that crystal ball in front of your heart, you would be purified, and all suffering would vanish. You would see. You would be illuminated. You would recognize Mara. You would be free and floating in metta. Now, anyone and everyone would get the opportunity to hold the crystal ball and pass it on. There's no need to fight or protect, just pass it on. Because the crystal ball is not of that nature that one can keep it for oneself. I imagine everyone would very cautiously hold the ball in front of one's heart, very moved and tender, open and vulnerable, grateful, full of life, and keen not to keep it for oneself because you can only pass it on. And it needs to be passed on. It would be hard to put into words how amazed we would be, how astonished we would be, how full of awe and reverence, how full of gratitude, how the energy and inspiration would run in our veins. I imagine I would take that crystal ball, that gem, into my hands as if I hold a dewdrop which releases and liberates. And we can relate to this so precious jewel by bending, by bowing, by folding. Bending knees, bowing heads, folding hands. It would not resonate at all with the Dhamma, that gem, that beautiful dewdrop, to build fences around it, to protect it. That would be harsh and crude, vulgar. The Dhamma, that palace of beauty, can only be approached through beauty and subtlety, through ever more and more refinement. And defending is none of this. And how would one defend what is utterly real? Reality and the path into reality don't need defense. And it would not resonate with the Dhamma either if we would use language which says, well, the Dhamma is just one of the many paths to liberation, and you don't need to revert this particular path, because there are so many, many ways to liberation, and all are equally valid and worthwhile. That would also be crude and harsh and vulgar. What is most precious, we need to relate to in a sacred way, because it is most precious and sacred. And a few weeks ago I was in Vajrasana on a chairs meeting, and entering the shrine room and seeing the Buddha Rupa was breathtaking. I was touched by the myth of the highest possible. And when doing a puja there, it felt so appropriate, so right, so just. The Buddha Rupa there is magnificent, is splendid, fabulous, majestic, big. And for the first time in my life, I really had the feeling that I had to look up, because when offering in pujas, it's happening so well, nearly all the time, that I am sitting in front of the Buddha and it's just like, oh, hello. And just doesn't work like that. And in Vajrasana, I really had to look up, and that's so appropriate. That's the real thing. And it felt so appropriate to finally be able to bow for the Buddha Dhamma, to feel in my bones that I am much, 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 much smaller, and the Buddha Dhamma much, much, much bigger. So our shrine rooms, our centers, and the way we talk, the way we sit in meditation, how we wear our keshas, our music and poetry, our paintings, our teacups, it can all be expressions of the grandeur of the Dhamma as a gem. So please let it be expressions of the Dhamma as a jewel. And I always have a mala with me in my pocket, this one, and I even sleep with it. And through the day I am touching it so now and then. Or I take it out of my pocket and put it around my neck or wrist. And this mala reminds me of Vaitara, reminds me of the transcendental. And it opens my mind, it lifts my mind up. The shadows of life become less grey, and this mala imagined brings me closer to that universe where one simply and spontaneously has to revere. So this mala isn't just a mala. A shrine room isn't just a shrine room. A rupa isn't just a rupa. What the world needs more is that we as Dhamma practitioners articulate more this sacredness of the Dhamma, this majesty, this grandeur. We don't need to reduce this articulating. Reducing this is reducing compassion and clarity. The Dhamma isn't just another detox therapy that one can do. It isn't about stress reduction. It isn't about some online game to pump up my ego. The Dhamma frees from suffering. The Dhamma illuminates. The Dhamma enchants. And we resonate with that. Because we are human beings, we resonate with what is truthful, with what is real, with what is beautiful, with what is the highest. It is natural that I love the Dhamma. It is natural. Isn't that mysterious in its own way? So when I fold my hands, something very, very essential is happening. A communication between the universe and me, which is unfathomable, but which we can try to put into words by imagination, to come a bit closer to the mystery of the transcendental. So when folding my hands, my fingers are talking. My fingers are talking to one another about what is real, about what is sacred, about what is most precious. And when folding hands, it is as if I come from the shrinking cold into a warm house with the wood stove burning and a bowl of hot soup on the table waiting for me. When folding hands, it is as if the universe is forming lips and is kissing me. And folding hands is maybe the most intimate thing one can do. Being intimate with the universe, intimate with one's highest potential, intimate with the highest well-being of another living being. Being intimate is maybe something like being totally absorbed by what is really, really helpful for oneself and other living beings. Being intimate is making love with the bodhicitta, burning all egoistic tendencies and celebrating the majesty and beauty. It is feeling the heavens between the palms of your hands. So if you want to, let's try it. So close your eyes. You can bow your head and fold your hands. And let you be kissed by the universe. Let yourself be kissed by what is most precious in the universe, by what is most intimate, the Dhamma and the fire of bodhicitta. And can you feel the transformative power of the Dhamma flowing through us, recognizing Mara, unmasking Mara? Can you touch what is beyond by bowing your head and folding your hands? Can you touch our roots in the sky? And if we are touched by the roots in the sky, can we tell the great story of this transformative power, which is like a whisper and at the same time like a tornado? Can we tell the story like a poet, like a troubadour, realizing that everything of worth is defenseless, that everything of worth is naked, and therefore needs to be communicated and imagined in an ever more subtle and refined way with reverence and sacredness. As a poet myself, good or bad, and you can't judge really because I write in Flemish, I want to give words to what is beyond. And I want to touch upon what is sacred. I want to come closer to what is beyond the daily and ordinary consciousness. I want to elevate the mind, elevate our consciousness ever more higher and higher. And I don't want to be old-fashioned, though I wouldn't mind being old-fashioned. I just don't want to give in to language which is stripped of wonder and majesty, of mystery and holiness. As a poet and as a human being and as an order member, I aspire to lean backwards, sitting in a beach chair, together with friends and contemplate and enjoy the sacred clouds coming and going, the holy blue skies, the endless and mysterious ocean with many, many unknown creatures. It is simply delightful to venerate blue skies, clouds, oceans, to gaze at the unseen together with good friends, in good company, to feed and elevate our hearts. And I don't want to just lean backwards and contemplate blue skies. I also want to tell a great story, one of those stories that matters, like Sam said to Frodo. Even the story that matters most. And I want to tell this together with others in our centers, in our palaces of beauty and compassion. A great story full of shadow and danger, but also a great story about how shadows are passing and how blue skies can be seen again, about the sun shining, about orchards shining in golden light, about the Buddha standing in reverence in that orchard. A great story about brave people who stood firm because they believed in something good, in something precious, in a path which leads us from shadow to light, a path which transforms, a path which can be shown, a path of majesty, a sacred path in which Mara is seen and unmasked, a sacred path which leads us to the marvelous unknown, a path which allows us to give the transcendental its place back in human mind. So let us be rooted in the sky. Let us hang in the transcendental. Let poetry show us the unseen. The Dhamma is a jewel, the Dhamma is a gem, and the Dhamma is sacred. So let us relate to the Dhamma as a jewel and as a gem and as sacred. In our language, in our rituals, in our shrine rooms, in our tea breaks, in our sleep, in our centers, in our giving, in our loving and in our living. Let us be ruled by majesty. Let us be ruled by the jewel of the Dhamma. Thank you.